Good evening. It's now 6:30, and I call to order the regular meeting of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda this evening is announcements. Our next workshop will be held on Monday, April 28th from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Victoria Recreation Center in the multipurpose room. During this workshop, the Council will discuss the 2025-2028 strategic plan and the long-term visioning for the Victoria Rec Center. All meetings of the City Council are open to the public and are held in the Council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. We encourage anyone wanting to attend our council meetings or workshops in person to contact our city clerk in advance. In other announcements, we are accepting nominations for our Community Builder Award. Each year in June, the city recognizes an individual, group, business, or organization that has, through their outstanding volunteerism or exemplary action, demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to making Victoria a better place today and for the future. Nominations are due by March 31st. Please contact our Communications and Public Engagement Director, Kendra Grawl, with any questions or if you need additional information about the program. We have an upcoming open house for our transportation project improvements that residents might be interested in attending. The Downtown West Highway 5 and 11 Improvement Project and Highway 11 Project, County Road 11 Project, will be held on Thursday, March 27th, from 5 to 6 p.m. It will convene in the Victoria City Hall in the council chambers, right here at 1670 Steiger Lake Lane here in Victoria. For any questions or additional information about the street's improvements, please check our community webpage, then click Street and Utility Projects, or reach out to our city engineer, Kara Guerin. With that, there are no other announcements this evening. And our next order of business is to adopt the final agenda. Council, can I get a motion to adopt the final agenda?
Motion to adopt the final agenda.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the open forum. The open forum is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda or not an application form that will be coming to the council in a future date. Please don't expect any action from council this evening. We may ask clarifying questions, but this is not intended to be a back and forth. There is no one who is registered to speak in advance, but is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda or an application form that will be coming to the council at a future date? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine administrative and do not require deliberation or are housekeeping items that are required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull any item from the consent agenda for separate discussion and vote?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Members of the council, anyone from the council? Any member of the audience wish to pull something from the consent agenda item or consent agenda for separate discussion and vote? All right. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Make a motion to adopt the March 10th, 2025 consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now moving on to our regular agenda. The first item this evening is 6.1, which is Planning Commission, Park and Rec Committee, and Senior Advisory Committee appointments. Presenting on this item this evening is our City Manager, Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, I have a squeaky chair here this evening, so my apologies. So you just got done doing your interviews for Planning Commission, and on February 24th, during that workshop, you interviewed applicants for the Park and Rec Committee, and then we had one applicant for Senior Advisory Committee. And we have 3 openings. So you'll be assuming that you'll be making that appointment for Senior Advisory Committee. And then you'll have to make appointments this evening for Planning Commission and Park and Rec Committee. Those are the 3 citizen advisory boards that we have. And there are a number of openings. So to assist council with that, those motions, we have listed the applicant names for each of the committees, the applicant names and potential motions for you to consider. I think this is going to be a difficult decision. We had such wonderful applicants who are willing to give their time and talents to the community. And it really has been a pleasure listening to all the ideas and the talents that they could bring forward to the community. So with that, staff will stand for any questions. Otherwise, we'll pass the floor back to council for discussion and appointments.
Very good, thank you. Clarifying question, are we taking these each individually, correct?
Correct.
Okay. With if council is okay with this, I would recommend that we start with Senior Commission. If that's all right with everybody?
Thanks, Mayor.
Senior Advisory Committee, we had one applicant, Jennifer Spalding. I will make a motion that we appoint Jennifer Spalding to the Senior Advisory Committee for a 3-year term beginning April 1st, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations to Ms. Spalding. Next, let's go to our Park and Rec Committee. Before we discuss the appointments here, one of the things that we have talked about is the Park and Rec is currently a 7-member committee. We have talked about expanding that to be a 9-member committee. I understand, Councilmember Pedersen, you've had a conversation with the chair of our Park and Rec Committee. You want to share a little bit about that conversation?
Correct. I had a chance to speak with Chair Schultz last Friday regarding the number of participants in the Park and Rec Committee. Standing at 7, I asked him how he felt about moving to 9. He felt comfortable with that and felt that it would be good, especially with summer vacations and a lot of other things that come up for people, that having 9 people involved would only give us a better group of folks to draw information from. So he's very comfortable with it.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Pedersen. So with that, I want to open the discussion for council about pros and cons of expanding to a 9-member Park and Rec Committee versus the current 7-member Park and Rec Committee.
I think right now, pro for me would be, as Councilmember Pedersen mentioned, flexibility with scheduling and things like that. We are a growing community. We need these ambassadors in our community. So I don't see a con.
I would agree. I don't see any cons either. And sometimes we see it every year, right? Like sometimes people move, something happens, they drop off, and in this case, people are right up to speed. It'd be one thing if we didn't have great candidates, right? But we had all 3 of them, right? And our incumbent, right? We had 4 great candidates that I'd rather put them all on than have to tell one of them they can't do it because they all are great.
Councilmember Ivansky, any comments from you?
Other than I'll defer to my other council members and then join in agreement that expanding to 9 is a reasonable use of staff's time and reasonable coverage for the city and drawing on our expertise of people who are willing to serve.
Very good. I'm going to ask a procedural question here. Do we need to make a motion to expand our committee?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I guess I don't know as I sit here now if there's any code language we need to take a look at. I think there probably is, and Dana's confirming that that's the case. So I think probably direction to staff to implement that policy decision is the best thing, and staff then can bring back whatever documents are needed to make it happen.
Okay, very good.
The only other question I would have, right, so we have 3 that are 3-year terms and 1 that's a 2-year term. My initial thought, I guess, and since we're talking about this, is that since Terry has been on the committee for a while, that maybe we keep her at the 2 and then the new people get the 3-year terms so that they get their feet. You know, it's probably more likely that someone who's been doing it for a while might want to be done in 2 years versus, I guess that was my initial thought, unless people disagree.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that as well.
I would agree with you, and I'd also say the other 3 interviewed and Terry did not.
All right.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, very good. So first and foremost, we're going to direct staff to make the adjustment on our, the size of that Park and Rec Committee. And we don't need to do anything further now that that's taken care of. So now that that's finished, I will entertain a motion. You go ahead and make that formal motion if you would, Councilmember
Make a
Roberts.
motion to appoint Alexander Haim to the Parks and Recs Committee for a 3-year term beginning April 1st, 2025.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can we do this all in one motion, or do we? Okay.
Oh, we can do, I can read them all. Okay, sorry. And make a motion to appoint Chris Casey and Adam Dewar to the Parks and Rec Committee for 3-year terms beginning April 1st, 2025. And a motion to appoint Terry Cope to the Parks and Rec Committee for a 2-year term beginning April 1st, 2025.
Very good. Thank you. We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second for Councilmember Pedersen. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the tough decision to make tonight, the Planning Commission appointments. We just interviewed Planning Commission applicants. We have several incumbents. We are looking to appoint four positions and an alternate, or I'm sorry, 3 positions and an alternate. I'm going to ask a procedural question again. We have, in the past, provided some on-deck spaces. Do we want to continue to do that if council sees fit? Very good. All right, with that, council members, I'm looking for anybody who would like to start. We're looking for consensus to appoint 3 planning commissioners for a 3-year term and at least one alternate for alternate number 2.
I'm gonna just to say just discussion first, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's tough, right? Again, very talented group of people. It sounds like, right, all very qualified. To me, it's a little bit of, do you stay with status quo versus getting new blood and potentially new ideas, right? So I think that's our difficult decision we have to make, right? We know our incumbents do a great job, but is there benefit from getting new voices in there as well?
Yeah, I would agree. It's always hard because our planning commissioners do a great job, but I think it's important to, rotate through our residents and get some new voices on the planning commission and all of our committees, quite honestly. So we've got some really talented people in our community who want to serve, and I would like to give them the opportunity to do so. Other conversation, other discussion?
Just about Aaron. Aaron has, in lack of better term, served his time as an alternate and has literally been on the planning commission to replace me for 2 months. I think he absolutely deserves one of the positions.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that as well.
I'll share that. So should we
All right.
make a motion to handle Aaron's appointment and then work to the others?
That sounds great.
All right, then I'll make a motion to appoint Aaron Croft to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term beginning April 1st, 2025.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. I'm going to start off by saying I have a couple of candidates that I would like to bring forward. Ryan Graham and Jamie Cronell, I would like to appoint to the Planning Commission as well. Council consensus, or maybe what we should do, I know in the past we've named some of our top candidates, and we looked for a consensus among those top candidates. So maybe Councilmember Ivansky, you want to list a couple of top candidates on your list?
I felt that Mr. Robert Bean and Ryan Graham were excellent candidates for being appointed to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Councilmember Roberts?
I had Robert, Ryan, and Mallory as
And I had Ryan and Mallory.
Mallory, okay. Councilmember Pedersen.
I had Jarrett, John, and Ryan.
Okay. I'm seeing big favor for Ryan. We have a couple votes for Bob and a couple votes for Mallory. Did I get that right? No? Wait a minute.
You had Mallory and you had a Mallory, right?
We have 2 for Mallory?
I mean, we're splitting hairs. They're all excellent.
Yeah,
It's-
we are.
it's-
We are.
Do we want to make the next motion for Ryan, since that seemed to be a consensus?
That sounds great.
Make a motion to appoint Ryan Graham to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term beginning April 1st, 2025.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second with Councilmember Pedersen. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We are down to 2 votes for Mr. Bean and 2 votes for Mallory. I'm going to suggest we appoint one and put the other in an alternate position. Is there any consensus on appointment versus alternate?
Mayor, I'll support your recommendation for both appointing Robert and Mallory.
Okay, so one we have to point to an alternate position and the
Agreed.
other to the planning commission. Do you have a suggestion on that?
My suggestion would be to appoint Mallory as a full-time member and Mr. Bean as an alternate.
All right, I will take that as a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. We've taken care of that. So we do have opportunities that come up from time to time. For those of you that have interviewed with us this evening, if we do have an alternate position that opens up, we will contact you first. All right.
Mayor,
Yes.
members of the council, did you want to place anybody on deck? And if so, is there an order that you would like in case there's vacancies throughout the year? That way, we don't have to go back through the application and recruitment process because you have done that through this.
Council? We can put some folks on deck. We had votes for Jamie, Jarrett, and John. And we could put those folks on deck for when positions open. And I would do it alphabetically. Any other questions? Do we need a motion on that one?
Yes, a motion
Okay.
would be nice.
I will make that motion. Can I have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Any other comments, questions, thoughts on that? Again, thank you to all our applicants. We appreciate it very much.
The only comment I'd say, Mayor, is that it's always a difficult process to choose among really, really talented people who are willing to serve us. I think that all of us sitting behind the dais have all been in your chairs before, interviewing for these, what I'll say are coveted positions to really sit and serve and work with a great, wonderful staff. And my recommendation is, if we didn't select you, it was a very difficult decision, and don't be discouraged, and please just stay engaged and stay involved. Things change, people have to move, people find that their family situations don't allow them to commit the time, and we're always welcome to have people that we've already gone through and vetted the process step up and take those positions. It's a really great privilege, so thank you for showing up tonight.
Yeah, well said, Councilmember Urbanski. Very good. Our next item on the agenda is item 6.2, which is a public hearing for the easement vacations for Tamarack Properties. Co-presenting this evening is our city engineer, Kara Guerin, and city planner, Brian McCann. Ms. Guerin, Mr. McCann, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So 6.3 also relates to 6.2. So I'm going to give an overview of really kind of both. And I do want to note that I have some special guests here with me tonight. So Eric Johnson, representing Carver County, who's been here before, relating to the Arboretum Area Transportation Projects, and Andrew, our special guest from the Landscape Arboretum. So you will have a chance to hear from him shortly. So why we're here tonight, this is a topic we have covered extensively, broadly related to the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan in council workshops. I am not going to cover the transportation projects here again, but did want to specifically show this slide just to highlight what the topic here tonight specifically relates to. Out of the Arboretum Area Transportation projects, the Highway 5 improvement project, as well as the 82nd Street project. So those two projects in particular are what brings us here tonight. And I did just want to note that the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum is surrounded by these projects. So the Arboretum is located within the two projects, and then of course, as everybody's aware, also owns land around the Rolling Acres Road project, north of Highway 5, as well as west of Highway 5. So including during the study phase, the Arboretum and the University of Minnesota have been part of the partnership since the beginning as we've been working through all of these projects. So the aerial, there we go. So back to just the broader context of the project area. So all of these projects do have property impacts to the Arboretum. There's about 15 or so specific impacts to Arboretum area property where the project needs to acquire property from the University of Minnesota in order to construct the project. So similar to the Highway 5 and 11 project that we are leading, the project has to go through the property acquisition process related to working through property acquisition. But further than that, the Arboretum is impacted from access perspective. So those of you who are familiar with operations at the Arboretum, there's a lot of different access points out to Highway 5, even just related to research fields over around the Rolling Acres Road and Highway 5 intersection. There's a number of access points that are being closed as part of this project, as well as some access changes that the Arboretum's planning with the project itself. So I'm gonna hop back over to here and make this bigger, which is a little bit awkward to do from here. So if we want to go into any of those specific details, Eric would be our guy to answer those specific questions. But the county and the University of Minnesota and the Arboretum have been working through all of those property impacts. In addition to the impacts to the property, the project has a number of environmental impacts. So we've discussed those here with the City Council. One such impact includes the, I want to go backwards. How do I go backwards from here? Impacts to the rusty patch bumblebee. We've talked about that. And there's other environmental impacts associated with the project. So what we've been talking about with the City Council, sorry, Brian, I'm moving you back and forth, is the city owns a number of properties up on the northeast side of Lake Tamarack. And so what we're talking about here tonight is part of the ongoing discussion that we've been having with ultimately using the property that the city currently owns in this area. And at the end of the day, selling this land to Carver County, who would then subsequently sell the land to the University of Minnesota, as really part of what I would consider to be a pretty grand partnership as part of both the mitigation of property impacts to the Arboretum, as well as creating an opportunity to address the environmental impacts of the project. So as part of the project, we are impacting the rusty patch bumblebee, and we need to mitigate for those impacts. So as part of this property exchange, and this is the part that gets a little bit technically complicated, we do need to create an opportunity to create new habitat for the rusty patch bumblebee. And we would be working towards having the opportunity to create that new habitat in land owned by the University of Minnesota in this area as part of the project. So while we don't talk a lot about the bee, working through this in concert with all of these different parties is actually a pretty exciting, unique opportunity to all work together, not only with the people that you see here, but also U.S. Fish and Wildlife, MnDOT, and other regulating parties who have to all approve these ideas for mitigating for environmental impacts. So what I imagine you all would be interested in hearing more about is what the University of Minnesota and the Landscape Arboretum's plans would be to do with the land after it would be transferred to the University of Minnesota. So the way we're going to flow through the rest of these agenda items tonight, I didn't put a specific agenda slide here today, but I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to talk about what their plan will be for the property should all of these steps move forward. From there, Brian will cover the specific planning actions that are on the agenda tonight associated with vacating the drainage and utility easements and right-of-way that exists within this property. He'll cover that. Then the council will hold a public hearing and consider action on those specific topics. And then the next item on the agenda for consideration by the City Council would be to approve a purchase agreement with Carver County for the sale of the property. I will go into the detail of the purchase agreement when we get to that specific item. But if it's okay with you all and you don't have any questions for me, I would like to turn it over to Andrew to speak about the plan for the property.
Very good. Anything for Ms. Guerin from council before we turn this over to Mr. Gopinski? Good evening. Did I just slaughter your name, Andrew?
That's perfect.
Welcome, Andrew Gopinski. Introduce yourself, please.
You might need a taller microphone.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me. I've been Executive Director at the Arboretum for just going on 2 years. It'll be 2 years in May. And it's surrounded by amazing communities, including the City of Victoria, and look forward to working with you as we move forward. The existing Lake Tamarack property that's owned by the university is a total of 80 acres. And so it's the southern part of the lake and then going towards the east as is highlighted there. That land was acquired in 2014 through state funding, LCCMR, and Lessard Sams, and the University Foundation. And it was acquired as such that it would remain in publicly accessible, focused on conservation and habitat and light recreation. So there's a dock there for lake access, and we maintain a gravel road off of 5 for that access. It's also accessible by the regional bike trail. When we started talking with the county and the state about the Highway 5 projects and the lands that were needed surrounding the Arboretum, the conversation really turned to how do we preserve new parts of land as we lose certain parts to the transportation projects. And so we started looking at a situation where we could find new lands to conserve. And so we started looking north of Lake Tamarack, which is currently owned by the City of Victoria, and potentially adding that to the 80 acres that the Arboretum maintains in the public good today. So our intention would be to maintain it just as the existing 80 acres is maintained, totaling over 100 acres of conservation land and completely conserving the lake shore of Lake Tamarack for the public good. So I'll end there.
Very good. Thank you so much. Does any Council, any questions for Mr. Kapinski before he grabs his chair again? Andrew, thank you so much for that. I think that's what we were, that's what we were hoping. That's been a beautiful part of the city of Victoria, and we've loved it as it is. So thank you for stepping forward and offering to be the steward of that beautiful spot. Council, I want to take a pause to see if there's any questions at this point. Seeing none, then I will turn it over to Mr. McCann.
One more thing there that I just want to add to that I want to highlight from what Andrew covered here. The distinct difference with the Arboretum maintaining that land compared to the city. Right now, the steward of that land would be the City of Victoria Public Works Department. And I mean nothing negative about the City of Victoria Public Works Department. But when we're talking about the ability to conserve that land, certainly the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum has different expertise and different knowledge in terms of being able to preserve that land in perpetuity. So we did just want to highlight the different level of care and preservation that would occur with that land compared to its what would happen today.
Yeah, very good. Well, point well taken. And nothing against the Public Works Department. They do a beautiful job. All right, Mr. McCann, let's turn it over to you.
On to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mayor and council members. So I know we've already talked a bit about the properties, but here pointing out that the areas that we're talking about highlighted in blue generate approximately 26 acres located east of County Road 13, Rolling Acres Road, north of Highway 5, also adjacent to Tamarack Lake and the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. Those properties are currently zoned PUD or just standard R1 low density. It also consists of portions from 3 separate plats that have previously been approved by the City of Victoria. Overlook at Tamarack Lake, Swiss Mountain, and Tristan Heights. And as was covered earlier, this land is proposed for acquisition as part of the Highway 5 Arboretum area transportation plan with the Arboretum. The vacating easements and the right-of-way that you will be considering this evening just removes any city authority that we would have in those areas. So I'll take this parcel by parcel. For the first one, we're just looking at vacating the standard drainage and utility easements for the site highlighted in red, except for this small portion highlighted in blue, which is part of a trail corridor. And then moving on to parcel 2, once again moving area in red, and then the area in green does not have any easements over it, so that area will remain unvacated. Parcel or easement 3 here for parcel 202, this one's a little bit different. We'll be vacating majority of the existing drainage and utility easement out there. A portion of that will be retained and a new portion added in blue. This is for a 50-foot wide drainage and utility easement. I will cover that on the next slide. Moving on to easement 4 here, once again, just the standard easements highlighted in red. Looking at that third one that I just showed you, the reason for this being is because interlocking currently terminates on the west side of Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. That is where our utilities end. That is the only existing utility corridor that we have to access these parcels on the east side of the trail. Anything in this area would require either Chanhassen Utilities or for the City of Victoria to get utilities in that area somehow. To leave that option open for any potential future developers, we're requesting this 50-foot wide easement here to make that a possibility if we do see any development out in that area. Then moving on to the 5th easement, once again, just area highlighted in red, standard easements that were recorded with the plat. Easement 6 here, once again, a little bit different, vacating the area in red, but we are retaining a portion in blue because there is an existing basin out there that the city needs to retain that easement for maintenance purposes. And then easement 7, we are vacating a majority of that piece except for a very small portion adjacent to Tristan Drive. And then lastly, the right-of-way for the east side of Interlochen from the Lake Minnetonka Trail. So this does require a public hearing. State statute requires that we notice it in the newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks, which we did on February 27th and March 6th. We also notified property owners within 350 feet of each of those easements I highlighted for you. Based on attendance this evening, I think it worked out all right. We also posted it on the city's website and on the monitor at City Hall. I did have one resident call me last week who was just generally curious about what was going to occur this evening, and then another individual approached me at the counter this morning. With that, staff's recommendation would be to hold a public hearing on the request and then adopt the resolution vacating drainage and utility easements and right-of-way for the Tamarack properties. I have a sample motion for you on the screen to adopt, table, or deny the request, and staff can stand for questions.
Very good. Council, any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
Mayor,
Yes, please.
may I ask a question of staff?
You may, sir.
So the threshold for voting on a vacation is 4/5 if it has not been petitioned for, and a majority if it has been. I'm not clear on, has this been petitioned for, or are we treating this as a non-petition?
Treat as a non-petition. These are city requested vacations.
Okay. So 4/5 vote to approve the vacation.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? All right, with that, this is a public hearing, so I will now open the public hearing on the easement vacation for Tamarack properties. If there is anyone who wishes to speak to this item, please step forward to the podium, identify yourself, and make your comments, please. Go ahead. Good. Very good. That would be great. Thank you. It's always good to have somebody who wants to break the seal here. Please identify yourself with your address and then make your comments.
Absolutely. James Cardwell, 7115 Kings Road. So I am a property just to the east of the Tamarack. So I've talked to many in this room, especially some other issues we've gone through with some developments, things of that nature, but especially with this property, the way it's written, I just want to actually commend the written of the purchase agreement, protecting public use of this for perpetually, things of that nature. I've lived at that property for 6 years. I do not ever plan to leave. So that's one of those things that we've actually used that land. A man from Swiss Mountain actually used to mow the trails with his lawnmower. So to see a little Toro push through, and that's how I'm actually very thankful that we will get the same as the south part of the lake. One area I do want to call out was per the easement 3 is with that little, I think 60-foot buffer, I would be concerned on that because it's kind of contradictory to the idea of conservation. It'd be 2 things. One, it looks like it would go through that is a James J. Hill railroad bed. Like that's a very historic area. You can still see it. I would hate to see it just kind of lose its culture versus the history of what that little trail is and to see what it was prior to today's engineering and the feats of those things. The other one is that's a very well-mature area of oak trees, areas where the rust patch bumblebee would actually dormant in the wintertime. They would hide in the hollows, the things of that nature. So I don't feel it's very necessary, especially with just to the east side of the property. There's not that many, and most of us, I would probably say I have one of the cheaper houses, and most of them are $1 million houses plus who want land. They're not looking to develop, and they're newer. So I don't feel that it would be necessary to put drainage and utility at the cost of kind of contradictory to losing part of that value of the land, the historicalness of it, and things of that. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this? Please step forward. I'm going to ask again, anyone else who would like to speak to this item? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tina Palks, and I live in the Tristan, just south or east of the Tristan Heights development, where that portion is being talked about. My concern, and just I'm happy to see that it's going to be to the Arboretum and that they're going to conserve that property to stay for the bees. And not be developed. So that's just what I would like to say, that we appreciate that it stays the way it kind of is and better developed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Last call. Anyone else that wishes to speak to this item? Please approach the podium. Going once, going twice. Thank you. Close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is now closed, and I will open the floor to council discussion. Council, any comments, questions, discussion on this item?
Just one point of clarification regarding the easement that Mr. Cardwell brought up. Is that right? That's just an option, right? There's not going to be development done through that 50-foot down the road 50 years. If something changes, we would have the ability to do it should those new residents want to do that. Is that correct?
Ms. Karen, you guys are pointing at each other.
No,
All right.
I'm happy to take.
Ms. Karen, please.
Mayor, members of the council. So we really do need to preserve a corridor to potentially provide city sewer and water to a portion of our city. So circumstances where we may need to extend city sewer and water to that part of the community could be development driven, but it also could be a circumstance where groundwater could become contaminated and homeowners would need to connect to city services. Right now, a number of those properties, all of those properties that have homes on them, are served by septic system. So really, staff did feel it was important to preserve a corridor should we need to extend utilities. If we did, likely we would envision that those utilities would be extended through directional drilling methods, not open cut methods. And we did locate the corridor based on where we envisioned the utilities being able to be constructed. So we are dealing with some topography through there. So we did have to site that corridor based on where we envisioned a force main and water main would be able to be extended through that area. But certainly extension of utilities through that area would require approval by the city council. And that would all be your decision down the road when a circumstance would.
So it's kind of kept for an emergency purposes, basically.
Development driven or circumstances where it would become necessary, but ultimately that would be a council decision at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Seeing none, can we take a look at our motion here? And I will entertain a motion.
I'd move to adopt the resolution vacating drainage and utility easements and right-of-way for the Tamarack properties.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
No, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Covers our 4/5 requirement, and we are good to move on. Thank you very much. The next item, 6.3, which is for the potential purchase agreement to sell Tamarack properties at appraised value to Carver County for the Highway 5 improvement project. Back at this again is our city engineer, Ms. Guerin. Kara, please.
Continuing on, Mayor, members of the City Council. So in your packet, you have a draft purchase agreement that reflects what we've just discussed here. So selling the land specifically to Carver County. So just to note, the reason why the City of Victoria would be conveying the land to Carver County, quite frankly, is so that the City of Victoria did not also have to enter into an agreement with the University of Minnesota, while Carver County is entering into a very large agreement with the University of Minnesota, reflecting all of the project elements. So the City of Victoria will have a joint powers agreement similar to the joint powers agreement that the council has already approved for the previous 4 or 5 transportation projects that you have already approved. So The city would convey the land to Carver County. Carver County would subsequently convey the land to the University of Minnesota. So the purchase agreement is with Carver County. The purchase price would be based on the appraised value. Now, we wouldn't be receiving cash for that appraised value. Rather, it would appear as a credit in the joint powers agreement against the cost that we will be required to contribute for the Highway 5 project. So the costs that we will be required to contribute for the Highway 5 project are in excess of the appraised value of the land. So we're not concerned that we will owe less than the appraised value. It's clearly going to be higher based on the estimates we've received to date. So that is the way that's written into the draft agreement. A couple of other contingencies that I want to note within the draft agreement. There is a right of reversion in there. So should something happen where the project doesn't move forward, the land would come back to the city. So we wouldn't have a situation where Carver County would own this land. The county doesn't want to own it. The city doesn't want the county to own it. So if something were to happen where the University of Minnesota, the project falls apart, the project isn't moving forward, the land would come back to the city. The 50-foot drainage and utility easement we already talked about. And then we also are going to have to process what's it called? To release the development agreement.
Satisfaction.
A satisfaction of the development agreements for the 3 different plats that Brian noted on these particular lots. So that would come through at a future council meeting prior to closing. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on is there's language specifically in the purchase agreement related to public access easement specific to these parcels. So what that's speaking to is that the land can't be subsequently sold for development and that it needs to be accessible by the public. So we're working through final tweaks of that language between the city attorney and the University of Minnesota attorney, and that is getting finalized here relatively quickly. And so the sample motion that we have, you'll note that it does include subject to modifications approved by the city attorney to reflect those final changes that are moving back and forth between the parties. But with that, I would take any questions.
Very good. Thank you. I do have a question. Can you go back to that slide? Brian, talk a little bit about the release of development agreements. Is it because that property is currently zoned to be single-family development and we just want to make sure that?
Yeah, Mayor and council members, kind of what I talked about during the last item. It basically relinquishes any city authority that we have. What was approved for those developments were for construction of single-family homes. By satisfying those portions of development agreements for those areas, we're basically saying everything's either been done or we're relinquishing that right to confirm that everything's been done.
Very good. Okay, I understand. Okay. Council, questions on this?
So just one quick question, Kara. Maybe it's more financial in nature. But the net result is that the appraised value of this land that we've effectively had as stewards of conservation just simply by the act of the city of Victoria owning them. We're going to now move that conservation stewardship ultimately over to the University of Minnesota. We will have arguably the resources to maintain it, arguably the resources to keep that in the public domain for an express conservation purpose. And the benefit that the city of Victoria then gets in return is a credit to the contributions that we would otherwise have to bond for and pay principal and interest over whatever term we choose to finance this with. So this $200 and some thousand could long-term over 30 years be almost triple that we're saving the city of Victoria taxpayers by entering into this agreement. Is that a fair assessment?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or questions from council? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the purchase agreement to sell Tamarack properties at the appraised value to Carver County for the Highway 5 Improvement Project, subject to modifications approved by the city attorney.
Thank you. I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Council, there are no more items on our regular agenda, so we'll move on to reports and emerging issues. Attorney Vos, you're up first.
Mayor, thanks. Nice to see you. I don't have anything to report tonight.
Oh, very good. Nice to see you as well. Ms. Hardy, anything from staff?
Nothing from staff, Madam Mayor.
All right. Anything from members of the council?
Nothing, Mayor.
All right. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.